Hi, I'm Theo. I'm with Wildcoast Ecological. Despite its hiccups, 2021 proved to be a great year for the Wildcoast team, as we were invited to participate in the WESP program. WESP stands for Wetland Ecosystem Services Protocol, a program designated to bring British Columbia's wetland mapping up to par with other Canadian provinces. BC holds a huge number of wetlands along its vast coast, but also many more inland. However, few are mapped or studied in any meaningful detail. That's where we come in. Wildcoast, along with many other organizations, comprised what we call the Wetlands Workforce. We were sent to go find, document, and map these wetlands. The sites were chosen from satellite imagery. Our teams would then be sent in with our knowledge from working in BC ecosystems, field guides, soil measurement tools, water quality tools, and even drones to get a clearer understanding of what types of wetlands we were dealing with. At the time of this video's posting, a full report of the project is available online for you to read. The hope is to develop algorithms that can take satellite imagery and determine from that imagery itself what kinds of wetlands we're looking at, and hopefully it will lead to better or stricter enforcement of regulations around wetlands to protect and preserve or restore them for the future. Our work began in the lower mainland, in the zone known as the Georgia Depression. At our first few sites, Neil Fletcher, Director of Conservation at the BC Wildlife Federation, helped guide us through the steps we were to take at each site. Here, he's showing us how to check soil consistency, as well as smell. Metallic smells mean the ground was likely saturated with mineral soils, which is not conducive to every plant.
That's perfect. Give me 1 second.
At our first site, we even got a lucky sighting of a great horned owl in full daylight. Hold steady. Next was Pitt Addington Marsh. We were accompanied by a local First Nations member who guided us through the fields of sweetgale. It was tough walking, but the sweetgale smelled amazing.
Small one here is also another crab apple.
The next day it was all uphill up Sumas Mountain. Though more common at lower elevations, wetlands sometimes form in depressions at higher elevations, or on old flat logging pads, as is the case with much of the lower mainland. A bear had been up that way not long before us. And the clear weather finally gave us a chance to put our drone to use. At each plot, we would have to fill out a form describing the elements of that wetland.
I guess, because it's fluctuating the whole way, right? And then it's pretty equal throughout.
15, yeah. Sure.
Ponded water, greater than 95%.
I suspect this is higher than normal because of the vapor, which I think is because of vapor.
Sumas might have been an older site, but Merlot Drive, our next site, was a newly created wetland, and despite its urban surroundings, it actually had a surprising amount of wildlife.
Sure.
Camosun Bog is familiar to anyone near the UBC area. one of the few bogs around Vancouver, and the only one we actually had a site for. Given the area's archaeological history, a First Nations guide and an archaeologist were a must in case of any artifact discoveries while we were probing around. Just north of the Vancouver airport, we were sent to investigate a wetland, although disappointingly, it turned out just to be a dried field, overgrown with invasive species. Satellites can't get it right every time, that's why we get sent in. But it's still valuable to know when the satellite imagery does get it wrong. Sanctuary Pond by the PNE Fairgrounds was a nice change of pace, a relaxing day with the ducks. Joining us that day was Claudia Ferris. She'd been producing social media outreach for the WESP program, and as it turns out, she's a force to reckon with. Later, at our non-WESP volunteer events that Wildcoast runs independently, she'd even gotten local politicians to come out and help us with our restoration. Alder Grove Regional Park was a challenge, as most of the site was down a deep gully. Though the area proved to be a good mix of smaller wetlands neighboring the creek, and a few old-growth trees still remaining on site was nice to see. Kanaka Creek, on the other hand, while stunningly beautiful, only had a tiny wetland on a side channel that we nearly missed. Funny enough though, upslope from us were other sites to be scouted by other teams that were much larger and clearly defined wetlands. Oh well, luck of the draw.
I know what the flagging's for. It's for knotweed. I see a little one coming up right now. Or a couple, actually.
At 140th Street, we got a reminder of why we do what we do. After traveling through some less than ideal forest, we came upon our marsh. Although this part of the marsh was relatively healthy and been well maintained, we learned from locals that it used to be much bigger, and that housing developments had overtaken some of the nearby forests and likely paved over some smaller wetlands in the process. And those were our sites that we took care of in the lower mainland. But this wouldn't be the last for us with the WESP project. A few months later in November, we were tasked with gathering data on a few additional sites. The algorithms need at least 100 or so sites, and up to this point only 80 had been cataloged across all the teams, though that's not too surprising when some of the teams had the extra task of also dealing with that year's insane forest fire season. So, it was off to the island for us. Our first stop were the Wetlands by Cumberland. Meeting up with one of our old colleagues who was working for the Parks Department in Cumberland, They told us about a unique species, which, for their safety, I won't specify here, live and depend upon these wetlands. As such, the health and well-being of these wetlands is of critical importance to them, all the more reason to investigate and protect them. Next was a series of wetlands up Mount Provost. Although the area sees heavy logging activity, there's still a decent buffer between the cut blocks and the wetlands to lessen the impact. Driving up there, we also got a chance to see just why the locals love traveling these trails.
Okay, maybe just another, like maybe 10 steps forward, and you'll be able to get exactly what this wetland has to offer. I'll grab the rest.
Our second to last stop was Cowichan Lake. It's not always easy to identify a wetland. With only one dominant plant species and a few grasses and mosses to go by, sometimes it takes a little bit of guesswork, but no one's expecting us to be perfect. Up to this point, Mount Sumas had been the only location where both good weather and airspace was right for flying drones. We were worried we might not have another chance, however, our last site north of Harris Creek proved to have ideal flying conditions. An interesting perspective that only the drone could give. You can actually see the old animal trails running through these marshes, something that would have been nearly impossible for us to either get to or even see on the ground. This place was beautiful, despite the cut blocks. The wetlands here had huge variety, with the inflow creek being closer to an aquatic ecosystem. The large body of water was more similar to open water wetlands, and the edges were closer to marshes, so determining a type for the whole site was decided on, but only after much debate. After an amazing week on the island, it was time to go home. We had a blast getting to go out and get some hard scientific data, and we hope to be able to do so again in the future. As for the program and the wetlands mapping, we'll have links in the video description so you too can keep track of the mapping at home. And be sure to follow Wildcoast Ecological to keep up with our various restoration projects. And see our website if you're local and want to volunteer. This has been Theo with Wildcoast Ecological. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.